This message comes from KeyBank. Scaling a successful business takes more than just grit. It takes the right relationship. KeyBank pairs the right strategy with the right financial tools to keep your business moving forward. KeyBank opens doors. More at key.com/B2B.
Where were you, like in your life, when you first started reading fanfic?
I was a preteen when I stumbled upon fanfiction.net. Like, they were talking early 2000s here. You know, that whole contraption where, like, the family desktop is, like, in that room and, you know, and I'm, like, looking over my shoulder. But it was kind of convenient that my parents are both older, so they had no idea what I was doing or reading.
So I was also a fanfiction.net guy, a little later than Ashley. I think I came to it when I was like 12, 13. I started reading and writing fanfiction on fanfiction.net and did that for about 4 years. And I was very into the Hunger Games fandom. And then I branched into other fandoms as well, Glee when that started, and House MD as well, which I got into in my like later teens.
So Eli, you are a fandom hopper.
Very much so, yeah. I'm not loyal at all.
So one thing about me is that I'm nosy. If something is going on that people are talking about, that they feel passionate about, I don't want to be on the outside of it. And one thing that started showing up on my radar a few years ago was fan fiction. Fan fiction has been around a long time, centuries actually, so it's not like I hadn't heard of it before. However, when I asked people like in real life what was on fanfic sites like Archive of Our Own, better known as AO3, they looked at me so crazy. So I did some sleuthing. I checked it out and I saw all kinds of things. Some very creative smut, for sure. Some really compelling, like novel-length narratives about existing characters. But most of all, people connecting over shared fandom. And I don't think it's just me that's been curious about it. If you are anywhere near fan spaces online, even just as a passive enjoyer of tweets about specific shows, you've probably seen people talking about fanfic. But it's also behind some of the biggest books of the last decade. Some of the publishing industry's greatest hits started as fanfic. 50 Shades of Grey, which was a whole thing. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. That was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And so was Alchemized by Sen-Lin Yu. Those latter two are both getting screen adaptations as well. Studios are spending millions of dollars in deals to adapt these stories. To get into how fanfic is becoming mainstream and the burgeoning culture war over what gets published and who reads it, I'm joined by Ashley Reese, writer, cultural commentator, and fanfic veteran. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Eli Kujini, culture writer, PhD student, and author of a Defector article called Fanfiction's Total Cultural Victory. Hey, Eli.
Hi, happy to be here.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. So the first fanfic I ever read was for The Pit on HBO. Someone linked to their own fanfic on their X account. And I was like, okay, I get now why people are into this. And then I started to learn about Omegaverse, which has really kind of opened up a portal in my brain.
Yeah.
I had to block Omegaverse on Twitter. I had to block the phrase.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Omegaverse is a subgenre of erotica where people have like specific roles based on pseudoscience about hierarchies within wolf packs. Like characters are either alphas, betas, or omegas. Not safe for work, but you can look it up if you're curious. Also, I wasn't reading the tags of anything. I was just like, you know, going through it. And I'm like, I think this is supposed to be set in a Wendy's. And I'm like, but everyone's pregnant. Everyone can smell each other. And everyone's sweating.
I can't stand it.
No, I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum. But y'all have both been in or around fandom for a long time. Ashley, you have been in it for over 2 decades. Like, how have you seen its popularity or perception change in that time?
Obviously, as we're seeing, fanfic is now becoming quite profitable. I mean, we've always called it filing off the serial numbers when you turn a fanfic into another piece of like writing that doesn't belong to like an IP already. For example, like what happened with Alchemized, that was Draco Hermione fanfiction called Manacled. I know that Love Hypothesis was a Reylo fanfiction, which is
like a Star Wars, like Kylo Ren.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. We've slowly seen the success of filing off the serial numbers. While it's becoming profitable and more mainstreamed, there's still something about it where I don't feel comfortable talking about it with, as I call it, like civilians. Back in the day, fanfiction felt a little more cloistered, a little more secretive. Over time, of course, now there's only like, 3 apps that we use on a regular basis. Forums aren't really a thing anymore. And now we have the new generation of fandom girlies putting their whole government names and faces attached to videos about fandom activity and stuff like that. That used to be a little bit more, we do this, but we don't really talk about it for like the whole world to see, because it's not even like a shame thing as much as like there's too much to explain here. It's been a really fascinating shift in that way, in which, normies know about fan fiction now in a way they did not, 15, 20 years ago.
I talk about some of this in the article I wrote. One of the main things I have noticed is that fanfiction adaptations and romances are not exactly the same thing. There are obviously fanfiction adaptations that aren't romance, but it is the most common form for that kind of adaptation to take. The explosion of romance post-pandemic has really affected how fanfiction is seen in the mainstream. I worked as a bookseller from like 2019 to 2022.
Oh, so you've seen probably a huge shift. Yeah.
Massive shift, yeah. Like at the start of that, when people came in and they wanted romance novels, which were often more marketed towards like women like my mother's age.
Yep.
We'd often have to specifically order them in. In the relatively short time I spent bookselling, we went to having like a full big table of romance in the front. The book covers were kind of drawn up to attract a younger audience. And that was very much due to the explosion of book talk. Fanfiction adaptation is very popular in that space. I wouldn't go a week without my friend Lena, who is very involved in fan culture and knows various big writers, being like, hey, did you know that book is actually this kind of fanfiction reskinned? Someone else once pointed to a YA book that I will not name with a black girl protagonist, came up to me and like whispered, that's race-swapped Jungkook fanfiction from BTS.
Stop.
Which is probably the craziest thing I heard on the job.
I'm gagged.
No.
That's so funny.
I know.
Okay, so it's obvious that things have changed a lot, like a lot over the last 10 to 20 years. And it sounds like acutely in the past 5 to 6 years. One example for me is that like this recent article from New York Magazine, it was a big story by Alex Jung, and I love Alex Jung, that the story was about fujoshis, which is like Japanese slang term originating in manga and anime communities for women who love stories about gay men. And I can't even get into all of the discourse about this article, but part of the hubbub around this story is that he linked fanfic in the article. And some people felt like that was like blowing up the fanfic spot too much. But that felt like a clear example to me of like just how fanfic really is just like open for public discussion.
I really liked Alex Jung's piece. I'm very interested in how complex the sort of debate is and controversy is over him linking a fanfiction in the piece, which he did then later delink after the author asked Vulture or him specifically to do so. The fanfiction in question was circulating quite widely before it got quoted. That's probably why it got quoted. It's to do with Ilya Rozanov from Heated Rivalry being in like a WAG group chat with a bunch of the wives and girlfriends of hockey players. And so it's like fabricated text chats that are very screenshotable. And so I'd seen that multiple times before I saw it quoted in there. I recognized it. And so I'm like, that's a difficult case because it is already publicly circulating.
Yeah.
Just because AO3 is like this quite private space, this quite feminized, sexualized space in a way where we don't want outsiders gawking at it too much. That still doesn't make a public artifact not a public artifact. Equally, as a journalist, I probably wouldn't have linked it because AO3 kind of has a set tetchiness that is kind of understandable about stuff being cited too publicly.
My take is also kind of complicated, only in the sense that like I've been a journalist, but also someone in these fandom spaces. So it's kind of like, how do I talk about these spaces that are kind of meant to be a little bit more niche and a little more private, but quite frankly aren't. This is all available for public consumption. There really is an option on AO3 where you can lock a fan fiction to only people who have an account, and only they can see it. Most people don't do this. This is public. I understand why people are frustrated. We are being watched and we are being seen, and it's not like I think people should act accordingly. It's not like I think people should adjust their behavior because of that. But I also think that we are in an era where we cannot feign this shock and surprise every time something might get a little more mainstream in fandom. How do we not talk about these things that become phenomena on the internet? Like, the internet is part of culture now. We talk about that now.
Eli, you wrote a fantastic piece for Defector about fanfic's cultural victory. But I was really interested, Eli, in your material analysis on why fanfic has risen. Like, how are economic forces pushing fanfic to the fore?
Basically, it is not great to be a writer right now.
I've heard.
It has not been great to be a writer for some time. A lot of people have this dream, understandably, of making a living from their writing, and that is just not the reality for most people. And a lot of people do not have access to certain things that might make it easier, like MFA programs, like professional training, like writing retreats, like access to all sorts of professional resources. Fan fiction communities, you don't have to pay to join them. They offer very enthusiastic communities that do a lot of reading and editing of each other's work, support of each other's work.
Yeah, the comment sections, people provide feedback, or in the notes, they'll thank someone else for editing what they wrote. The writing community aspect of it is so much bigger than I think I initially understood.
100%. I don't think fanfiction is a reliable place to learn how to become a better writer, because I don't think anywhere really is. But I think it absolutely can become a place where you learn how to write, albeit write to the specifications of fanfiction specifically, which does not always map that easily onto a published book, for instance. You're writing in installments, which is a little different to writing in chapters. There's different formal stuff going on. But it is still often teaching you in community how to become a writer for pleasure, to invest your readers in what you're doing. It can teach you a lot of skills. And accordingly, a lot of literary agents are oh, okay, you have these writers who can build their own brand, who are writing on their own steam without getting paid. Those are very marketable skills in a way.
Some free labor.
Indeed.
And apparently literary agents have said they've been doing the same thing I've done, lurk on AO3 and see what's hot. But they're looking for clients, wild stuff.
Like Eli said, fanfiction and fandom has always been free, and it's kind of interesting to see this financial kind of element being thrown onto it.
I think it can be upsetting as well, people who take part in something that part of the reason it gets to be as crazy as it often is, as queer as it often is, as formally experimental as it often is this not having a direct profit motive thing.
Yeah.
We are going to take a quick break. But first, if any of you are finding It's Been a Minute for the first time, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the show and that you come back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning for brand new audio episodes. And now every Tuesday for video episodes. Tomorrow's will be on the fact versus fiction of being a kept woman. Trust me, it is exactly the kind of girl math a lot of people need. You can find that video on Spotify or YouTube, or just listen to the audio wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up after the break.
Yes, a majority of fan fiction is slop, because that's just kind of how the production of community writing works. I think you could quite successfully argue most books are slop.
Stick around.
This message comes from Angie. If you're tackling a home project, check out Angie.com. From roofing to remodels and everything in between, Angie connects you with skilled pros who do such a good job you might trust them to do other things, like pull out your tooth or be your kid's godfather. Don't actually ask them to do those things. Just let them get the job done well. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find a pro for your projects at Angie.com. That's ANGI.com. This message comes from NPR sponsor, the Capital One Venture X Business Card. Every business owner needs a serious business travel card that can keep up with their needs. With the Capital One Venture X Business Card, you earn unlimited double miles on every purchase, no matter where your business may take you. Plus, big purchasing power means you can spend more and earn more. The Capital One Venture X business card. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details. This message comes from Stamps.com. Shipping, billing, admin, you're managing all these things. Why waste time sending important documents the old-fashioned way? Mail and ship when you want with Stamps.com. Print postage on demand and schedule pickups from your office or home. That's why over 1 million small businesses trust Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com and use code NPR to try Stamps.com risk-free for 60 days.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Strawberry.me. Be honest. Are you happy with your job? Are you stuck in a job you've outgrown or never wanted in the first place? Are your reasons for staying really just excuses for not leaving? Let a career coach from Strawberry.me help you get unstuck. Discover the benefits of having a dedicated career coach in your corner and get 50% off your first coaching session at strawberry.me/NPR. Support for NPR and the following message come from Warby Parker, the one-stop shop for all your vision needs. They offer expertly crafted prescription eyewear, plus contacts, eye exams, and more. For everything you need to see, visit your nearest Warby Parker store or head to warbyparker.com.
I want to talk about the ways we see fan fiction permeate through the culture or show up in unexpected ways. Where have you seen that come through?
The fact that I hear people talk about tropes, civilians talking about tropes so much more often now, which I always kind of associate largely as a very fandom-heavy term.
I know that there's a metadata tagging system on AO3 at least, which allows for writers, and this is me describing it as somebody who's really not native to this. They use different hashtags to index their work, so you can maybe tag a specific kind of relationship or certain dynamic. Mm-hmm. But now tropes have become this huge thing in marketing all kinds of media. Can you say what you mean? For people who might be thinking of tropes in a literary or film sense, what are some examples of fan fiction tropes that people might not realize sort of originated from that space or became extremely popular through that space?
Right. I can't say for sure that it originated that space, but things for example, enemies to lovers as a trope that is now I've seen used as a marketing tactic all the time in romance novels. Grumpy Sunshine, kind of think of it almost like an opposites attract kind of thing, where it's one person a little more sardonic about the world, and the other person's a little bit just chipper, more optimistic. Tropes have kind of become the junk food in the book space, and we're just giving people what they want.
The sort of tropes thing, I see why it kind of can be very specific to fan fiction, specifically when you talk about enemies to lovers, because the excitement is in two characters that we already know to be sort of mortal enemies who would never get together. That's the excitement. Mm-hmm. There's a very specific tension there.
They hate each other, but what if they made out? Literally,
yeah, exactly,
I think, which is honestly a huge part of fan fiction in general.
Yes, fan fiction I think is very tapped into wish fulfillment, although not in the simplistic sense of that would imply that all fan fiction is happy and makes the people who they want to get together get together. It can also be a sort of reverse wish fulfillment where they want to see particular characters be miserable. Heroes and villains being shipped together is not new, and so imagining what if I broke that tension, what would that look like, is a big draw for a lot of fan fiction. And then certain novels are what if we gave you that pleasure of here that the enemies are going to get together.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's interesting to me about fanfic is that it seems like maybe a way to fix something about the original work. Of course, maybe to put two characters together that are originally enemies or originally platonic, but also to have them make different plot choices or to explore things the book or show doesn't get into. I also know your main fandom is Harry Potter, Ashley, and I get the sense a lot of fans that use fanfic to reimagine a relationship with the source material that can cut out an author whose politics you may find really deplorable, or even to retrofit certain aspects of a story that you maybe found undesirable.
I've dabbled in other fandoms to some extent. But when it came to fan fiction and real fandom chatter, it's been Harry Potter since day one. I'm not even going to lie, which obviously now is a little bit more loaded because of J.K. Rowling's politics on trans rights, which funnily enough, pretty much everyone in the fandom in the spaces I'm in despise J.K. Rowling for her views, and even in disclaimers for fan fictions, they will write, I do not support J.K. Rowling's views. I just like playing around these characters. Author is not important to me. Like, doesn't exist. So it's really interesting to see that evolve over the last 20 years. But the politics that she has developed, or, has really tried to emphasize in the last few years, feels like a betrayal to a lot of people who were into that fandom, because a lot of people who got into the series did see this as a story about fighting fascism, talking about racism, even if the parallels maybe aren't perfect.
I know it's kind of an open question in fanfic whether engaging with IP that many people feel was made by a person who is a bigot, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people wonder, I don't know, if that's actually okay or not, even if nobody profits from it.
Yes. I think this is obviously a directly relevant question to me. Rowling is currently bankrolling the persecution of my people in a very real sense. But I think, everyone has deep emotional investments in something made by a terrible person. That is not something that you can get away from if you're going to be alive and engage with the world. So in terms of litigating people's personal investments, I think that's a kind of useless line of inquiry. My focus is more on the sort of public life of that IP. And I think there are many different ways to engage in, say, Harry Potter fanfiction. A thing I would personally be full of far too much grief, I think, to engage with at this stage. But also there are a lot of trans people who engage with it and who come at it from a different angle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The difficulty I have is that the reskinned Draco Hermione novels that have been published recently, there are 3 that came out last year. There was Alchemized by Senlin Yu, which you've mentioned, and Rose in Chains by Julie Soto, and The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley as well. All of those have authors who are not in agreement with Rowling's politics, and Senlin Yu is non-binary. But that doesn't really seem to have radically destabilized their relationship to the IP, even if they do try and articulate trying to resist the bigotry of the author or particular aspects of the original material. I'm not sure that really comes through in translation with how the novels were sometimes marketed explicitly as Draco Hermione novels and how people discussed them in that regard. When we live in a kind of situation where, I live in a country where there is a wizarding shop, in every major city, at least one, physical high street shops selling Harry Potter merch. It is saturated and everywhere, and I find it quite exhausting because there are lots of people who are otherwise sympathetic to what I and my loved ones are going through, who haven't really come across or don't really understand the gravity of what's going on with Rowling. And I do think sometimes people whose main focus is defending to me their investment in that material, I can find that a bit tiring, but I'm not ultimately interested in their personal investment in that material. I'm interested in, okay, if you are publicly engaging with a certain kind of IP, how are you doing that in ways that are responsible, that are actively engaging with the politics of the original material and with how that material exists in the world today. Regrettably, I think, as you probably know intimately, Ashley, if you are a Harry Potter fan or have a history in that kind of fandom, you do probably have a greater moral responsibility that if you are supporting someone who is media by someone who is equally terrible but who is long dead, it is very possible to engage with certain kinds of IP in ways that are ultimately constructive. Just alongside that, I think there has to be time for, oh God, I wish I could never have to hear about these books again in my life.
Which I think is completely fair. Quite frankly, the thing that people don't want to admit in this fandom is that a lot of it is compartmentalizing. So I think it's part people making efforts to be like, I'm not going to spend money on this IP. I'm not going to give J.K. Rowling more profit. But there is also the contradiction. It's okay, we're still engaging with this IP from this woman who I never thought in my life I'd have to block J.K. Rowling. If you told me this, a little over 10 years ago, I'm just it's just repugnant. It's frustrating. And I think that when people try to twist themselves into knots to kind of defend this, that, or the other about it, I'm just we're compartmentalizing, you guys. We're trying to kind of cope. This is all cope. We're coping with the fact that this woman is kind of tainted, something that meant a lot to a lot of people.
For the record, when we reached out to J.K. Rowling for comment on this, she declined. Okay, I have another question to ask that I think might be thorny.
Let's get into thorny stuff. We can both talk about thorny. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, let's do it. I'm sure there are fan works that are masterpieces, and I've seen some really thoughtfully and well-written stuff in my time, sort of trolling AO3, but, there's also a lot of slop out there. And I think that's the case with anything where there's like a high volume of content, which, AO3, a high volume of content is produced on there. And I think many of the mainstream published books that come from fanfic, I think there's a lot to like about some of them. But many of them are not exactly literary fiction. I wonder, is this sort of deep embrace of fan fiction possibly promoting things that might be more slop adjacent?
So, interesting question. I have to talk about this quite carefully because, yes, a majority of fan fiction is slop because that's just kind of how the production of community writing works. I think you could quite successfully argue most books are slop. There are a lot of books published every year. We see like a tiny, tiny sliver of those books kind of actively promoted. And some of those books aren't even any good. And I say this as someone with a deep, deep love of literature who has dedicated my life to it. Most books aren't good. That's fine, in my opinion. There's something for everyone. In fan fiction, you have a lot of very young writers, you have untrained writers, you have writers who are kind of prioritizing a sort of excitement of engagement over editing. And I do think that can dovetail with certain existing problems in the literary landscape, like less availability of editors. Editors are often just so overworked now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of understaffing in publishing.
Friends of mine who've written books, the editor doesn't even really be editing the book. They'll just read it and be like, all right, give me more. Ready for the next set of pages. Yeah.
I think this particularly a problem with genre authors. I think this happens a lot with debut authors in general and minoritized authors in particular, across all kinds of axes of minority. I'm very worried about that kind of problem. But sometimes you get people kind of like, well, fan fiction is killing publishing. Hell, I wrote about fan fiction in, I think, a relatively even-handed way. Mm-hmm. And I had various people like, why are you not talking about this like it's the apocalypse? And it's because I don't think it is. And I think if it is, that's not really fan fiction's fault. But you have some very good books out there that have obvious affinities with fan fiction. I do, however, think it often requires certain kinds of skill to rarefy tropes in that way. And when it's easier to just sell something with a bank of tropes on the back, where you don't necessarily have to execute them properly, that is an inherent problem with fan fiction adaptation.
Ashley, I see you nodding.
Yeah. Yep. I think that we need to have a come to Jesus moment about the fact that we are just increasingly going to be in an era where a lot of writers, whether they were even that deep into the weeds in fandom or not, have read fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Eli, you said in your article that, quote, fan fiction originated romances, erotic and not, have an eye-catching presence in most bookshops now. This has fueled ongoing culture war content about the feminization of contemporary fiction, the degradation of literary standards, and whether men can even sell books anymore, end quote. So, to be clear, men do read less than women. Men read less fiction than women do, and people sometimes talk about it in panicky ways. Mm-hmm. How do fanfic and fanfic-originated books kind of fuel this kind of worry about what's being published and who's reading it?
So as the one literate man, apparently. In existence.
Hold on. Liam, who is producing this episode, he reads a lot too. Shout out to Liam. You guys are holding it down.
As one of the two literate men.
We got two men who read. Let's go. Yes.
Actually, one of the women I interviewed, Sarah Briette, has written about very well for Defector. It's called the plight of the white male novelist or something. Mm-hmm. Things that have happened in publishing to do with there being fewer men publishing novels. It's mostly to do with, again, economic factors. Publishing has become less lucrative. Men have often gone elsewhere to places that are more lucrative, and women have filled their jobs, and reading has gone in and out of being feminized in general. I mean, it seems like we're in a more feminized zone right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, women read and buy a lot more fiction. Fandom is very female dominated. I think a lot of the kinds of desire and sexuality that are gotten at through fandom appeal to all genders, but men are probably more scared of it. They're more scared of engaging with it openly. It feels embarrassing for them. And so a lot of the men who engage with it are already gay, trans, for instance, have already bypassed a few layers of shame about your internal external desires. Books that are associated with being not very good and being smutty and being aimed at women who like romance and who supposedly all want an escape from their boring domestic lives and husbands. Obviously, that's a caricature, but a caricature that is redeployed a lot in the romance space. Men are absolutely very inclined to go, well, this is the decline of culture, and we need to make entire literary houses that only publish fiction by men, things like this, as if men are somehow being persecuted by the fact that women buy a lot of these books. It's like, well, you could also buy books and you don't, so this is what you end up with.
You don't even have to buy these books. You could buy other books.
Indeed.
It's actually really funny because there was a tweet a few weeks ago about some guy took a picture of a display at a bookstore, and it was a lot of it was romance novels. And it was just like, and he said something to the effect of, I haven't been to the bookstore in like 5 years, and I come back and it's all this. I'm like, you have not been to the bookstore in 5 years. We can talk about, the cynicism that comes with marketing and all the stuff for like these spaces and the romance space. But at the end of the day, they are trying to make a buck. And if you are saying that you have not been to a bookstore since before the pandemic, and all of a sudden you're like, what's going on? It's like, you are not the audience. You are not the primary audience that these retailers are aiming towards.
The other thing I'll say is that I also worked in a bookstore throughout the time that I was in college, and men were coming in all the time and buying like the worst books you could possibly imagine, like the 48 Laws of Power and things like that. I mean, there are tweet threads that are better than some of these books that a lot of men buy, to be honest, and buy in large numbers. So it's like, I don't know. I think all genders have their own slop that they engage in different ways.
With men, it's like grind, set, slop.
Yes. But I got one more question. What are people getting out of fanfic or fanfic-derived books that people want and like and are maybe missing in other kinds of culture?
As someone who does care about craft, it really helped me realize I want to do this all the time. It made me realize I want to become a writer. But I think the thing that keeps people in fandom spaces and keeps them wanting to be in fandom spaces is honestly the community. It's like, I cannot explain the extent to which I have developed lifelong friendships with people I met 15 years ago while talking about a fan fiction, that we've gone to each other's weddings. We've developed like real relationships with other people just based on like fun thought exercises.
Fanfiction is very closely engaged with what people want. Like, I think to an extent when you're writing, you're always in some way getting at, like, what do I want to see? What do I want to put on the page? Or what do I want, like, in myself to express or something? But fanfiction gives you this kind of ready-made structure. It asks you to tap more deeply into a kind of register of desire that can be kind of shameful for people, partly because it can be sexual, but it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It can be emotional, but I think it can be very vulnerable for people. A lot of like queer people, for instance, are going, I want to see the queer thing that they won't put on the screen because my particular minority is persecuted or whatever. Also, there's something even deeper than that in terms of I want something and sometimes I don't 100% know why, or this thing makes me cry and I'm not 100% sure why it does, but I want to explore that. It's, I think, a very valuable kind of emotional work when it comes to being in the world, of going, okay, how do my emotions work? How do my emotions work in community? Because it's not just a kind of personal project. It's like I'm trying to connect with other people. Like you can end up really being in touch with what do I want out of my life and out of the world. And I think fanfiction is one of the ways in which I learned to articulate desire at a very pivotal point in my life.
I feel privileged I got to speak with you both about fanfiction. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
This was so fun.
That was Ashley Reese, writer, cultural commentator, and fanfic veteran, and Eli Cugini, culture writer, PhD student, and author of a Defector article called Fanfiction's Total Cultural Victory. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Liam McBain.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Engineering support came from
Damian Herring.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Sony Pictures Classics with A Magnificent Life. From the imaginative director of The Triplets of Belleville comes a new animated film. Marcel Pagnol must relive his colorful past by writing about his own childhood. Now playing in select cities.
This message comes from Rosetta Stone. Spring travel coming up? Rosetta Stone has been the trusted leader in language learning for over 30 years. Ready to start learning a new language this spring? Visit rosettastone.com/NPR today.
This message comes from Bayer. Science is a rigorous process that requires questions, testing, transparency, and results that can be proven. This approach is integral to every breakthrough Bayer brings forward, innovations that save lives and feed the world. ScienceDelivers.com.